leading these efforts toward what I like to call identifying our humanity. And that's kind of what this is really all about. When we're talking about equal rights, we're talking about people's human dignity. And so I'm offering that we reframe conversations about diversity and we call them conversations about our individual and shared humanity. So in addition to bringing people together to talk, listen, and connect, that's where you have that hand. That hand is roughly borrowed from Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery. And in that he wrote, we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one as the hand. And I want you to think about that. That operative word is hand. So while this is really about, the session is supposed to be about racism, I want the session to be bigger than that. I want the session to be about our humanity. And I want us to frame issues of diversity within this context of what we're calling Humanity 101. It's not a course, it is a foundation. You know, if you've had any, Music 101 or History 101 or Art 101, it's a foundation. I'm saying that humanity is the foundation of any success. The fact that we can talk about compassion and empathy, forgiveness, integrity, kindness, respect, and self-reflection should be the guiding principles when we talk about difference. I know, because I've been doing this for 30 plus years, that white people can get really, really uncomfortable when we talk about racism. Even when we talk about diversity, we have a name for that. Robin DiAngelo calls it what? White fragility. Boys and men have it too. As soon as women start talking about things like rape culture, which we're going to do next week with Project Humanities, how to dismantle that, or as soon as we do something like we did last week to talk about menstrual equity, people get all kind of discomfortable. And women get uncomfortable too when we are talking about not feminine hygiene products, we're talking about menstrual hygiene products, because it's not just men and it's not just women and girls who menstruate. And you're thinking, what? That's not even true. And you know why? Because I learned that. You know who else menstruates? Transgender men menstruate. You see, you already learned something right there. And what I'm saying is that if we're going to be inclusive in our language, what we have to do is make sure that we are being inclusive of everyone when we're talking about justice and social justice. So I want to frame this within the context of what I'm calling privilege and bias. And I know from past experience, when word privilege comes up, people immediately start saying, I know I worked hard for this, and my family came over and blah, 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 and we had a work ethic. I said, that's not the privilege I'm talking about. I'm talking about the privilege that you did absolutely nothing to earn. Nothing. And I'm also not interested in anybody's guilt about the privilege, because if you did nothing, then you shouldn't feel guilty about it. The only time you should feel guilty about something is if you've done something or didn't do something you should have done. Now, if you're not out there fighting and being anti-racist, then you should feel guilty. If you're not out there, if you're just being non-racist, like, oh, I don't say the N-word, or, oh yeah, I really didn't like the fact that the Virginia governor wore blackface, but you didn't do anything about that, then you may be part of the problem. So that's what we're going to talk about today within the context of 45 minutes, is try to frame this within bias and privilege by giving you some demonstrations. So I'm going to ask you, you all have paper. I'm going to do something that if we were in a different physical space, we would stand up and do this. But we're going to do it just sitting there. And I want you to, on your paper, I want you to divide your paper into half. This way, not this way.